So today's objectives, hopefully we're fairly comfortable with why we're here, to get a bit of an understanding of PPT, of this particular procurement for a strategic delivery partner, engage the market, go over some of the key priorities for the Home Office, what they're looking for in a strategic partner, and look at sort of next steps, the indicative timeline, etc. Next slide, please. Finally, the commercial disclaimer. This is a knowledge exchange exercise. It's an opportunity to engage freely and openly, but as you know, nothing you hear today will commit the Home Office to any particular course of action. This is indicative. It's to give you an idea of the direction of travel. Things are, of course, subject to change. Next slide, please. And finally, just a reiteration of how to ask a question. Whether you're attending virtually or here in the room, please use Slido code 692797 to ask your question, and we'll get to it at the end. I think that's more than enough from me. So delighted, next slide, please. Delighted to introduce Mike Hill. Welcome back to Tech UK, Mike. Thanks for coming. Over to you.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Good to see so many familiar faces and some new faces as well. And thank you for your interest in our procurement. It's a key procurement for us within PPPT, and we'll go through the details today on what that is. But if we go to the first slide, if we will, just provide a bit of context of who we are, what we do, and why we do it. So I'm sure the Home Office is not unfamiliar to you all, and the breadth of services it offers and how integral it is to our society is something that I'm learning all the time. And I've been in the Home Office for 20 months now, and it is profound across the whole of the UK for supporting our society. As you can see, there's just a few stats of what we do within the Home Office. 6 million passport applications per annum. Yeah, we've got 140 ports with Border Force officers. Obviously, with the 43 England and Wales forces, and with 34,000 employees, of which over 10% are within our DDaT function as well. So complex, ever-changing, ever-evolving organization and environment that we work within. And DDaT needs to keep pace with that and help with that transformation, help with that change, and help obviously deliver the operational services that their Home Office is committed to do so. So absolutely key for all of that. If you'd like to move on, if you would. Just a few things about us within DDaT. On the left-hand side here, you can see devices. Now, if you'd have put that slide up probably 2 years ago, the amount of desktop PCs compared to laptops would be kind of inverse. We've been on a significant journey, obviously, from the whole COVID lockdown situation, and over the last 18, 20 months. Obviously, how do we evolve as an organization? How do we change our way of working towards the hybrid model that we're all adopting? How have we coped, obviously, through lockdown to enable the ongoing provision of the services and moving away from kind of 9 to 5, everyone logged into their desktops and what have you, to a very much more dynamic environment with digital tools, laptops, and obviously all the UC capabilities have been absolutely paramount for that. And that's been a huge focus for us. And we're not alone in that across government, indeed across industry. On the right-hand side, you can see the growth in Skype. Now, we no longer really have Skype, it's Teams. Actually, how do we make sure that all of that capability is used and used effectively, where it's very little used previously? Now it's absolutely core to everything we do within the Home Office. So again, how do we evolve? How do we make sure that we can not only keep pace with change, but actually help our customers drive change as well? One thing I'm particularly proud of is the EU settlement scheme. So within one of our sister portfolios, that program was led and all the digital elements of that. And that's been a significant success to enable obviously over 5 million applications to be processed effectively within the deadline that was set as well. And a few more stats on kind of emails and what have you. I'm sure that we're very the same as a lot of government and industry partners as well. If you want to move on, if you would. So DDaT, the structure of DDaT. So we're led by Simon Bourne, who's our Chief DDaT Officer. And within the organization, we've got 3 major delivery portfolios. So PPPT being one of those. We have our migration and borders, border immigration as it is there, as a focus on the internal operation elements of everything to do with the border and migration. Enablers, that's the core IT within the organization. Actually, how do we enable that to happen? And then obviously police and public protection technology that I'm very proud to lead. And we'll talk more about that and where we're going and how we're going there shortly. But we're supported admirably by Rob Thompson, the CTO, providing all the enterprise architecture and the support and the guide rails that we work within. We've got quality assurance as a absolute core team within DDaT as well, so to actually provide that to matrix services across the organization. And we've got a chief operating office to keep the whole kind of show on the road, really, to keep us all focused on all the good stuff that we would imagine that a chief operating officer would do. And then enterprise services. So obviously key to our first line and second line support, incident management, problem management, all those kind of things. So key relationships with us within the delivery portfolios to ensure that obviously we're actively engaging with enterprise services throughout the delivery lifecycle. That's a key element as well, to make sure that we're designing for service right from the get-go as well. So PPPT ourselves as an organization, so we're primarily responsible for the design, build and sustainment of national scale systems for public protection, law enforcement and homeland security. So we face off into two major missions within the Home Office: Homeland Security Group and Public Safety Group. So key that we work within them, and we're digital partners to help shape policy, help shape strategy, but importantly, deliver. And we're very much a delivery portfolio, and that runs through our DNA. So if we can move on, if you would, please. This is our structure. So we restructured about 15 months ago to take into account the scale efficiencies that we could realize from bringing certain systems and teams together to enable that to happen. As an organization, we're about 1,000 strong, of which about 400, just under, are civil servants. And that number is growing all the time. But you don't have to be a math genius to show then actually partners are absolutely paramount to our ability to deliver against the commitments we make to our customer base. And getting the right partner mix in with the right ethos, the right capabilities, the right capacity is absolutely key for us. And it's delighted to see that we've got a number of existing partners in the room today, but also very much looking to expand that and shape our partner base to enable us to deliver effectively going forwards. So if I just do a left to right, in fact, what I'll do actually, I'll do a far left and a far right first, and then talk about the others. So we've got two major programs within PPPT. We've got the National Law Enforcement Data Program, NLEDP, and we've got Home Office Biometrics. So HOB came in about 4 months ago into the portfolio. So both are obviously very significant sized programs, and I've been going for a while now. And NLEDP, I'm sure you're aware, we came out of reset in July, subject to an NAO review and a PAC hearing a few weeks ago now. And now we're moving forwards and rebuilding that program and moving forwards at pace, and that's absolutely key. The rest of the organization is broken into functions and broken into delivery portfolios. So those delivery portfolios look about the scale efficiencies that we can actually achieve. And that's absolutely key for us to bring together, so for example, the national data systems, which is a large scale portfolio, bringing together not only transformation delivery such as CADE and NAS, but also sustainment activities such as the PNC, P&D, and a number of other national systems that we've got there. We've got the international law enforcement side of things. So we had a system called SIS2, Schengen Information System, that was closed down in the end of last financial year. Now we're developing, and have been for the last year or so, iLeap, which is the replacement for that. It's the International Law Enforcement Alerting Platform, to enable ourselves to share alerting data with international partners as we sign bilateral and multilateral agreements. Consultancy and demand management. So that's a new function that we've put in place to control the demand that's been placed onto the organization. to make sure that we can absolutely deliver against the commitments we make by making the right commitments in the first place. So uncontrolled demand and a constrained delivery engine equals obviously poor delivery. So we've got to really focus on that, and that's something we've done and invested a lot in as well. Homeland Security IT. So that's a growing part of PPPT, actually supporting the Homeland Security mission going forwards. Law enforcement infrastructure. So this is about the building blocks of what we do as an organization, getting our law enforcement cloud platform ready to take on the likes of NLED-P and other major national systems, to ensure that we've got identity and access management, so all of our systems can talk to each other, and obviously our users can interact with them effectively, and others within that as well. Law enforcement innovation, so we've got Alex, heads up that team. Lots of great stuff being done there. So as part of the demand management side of things, we've established a discovery as a service activity, a team, which enables us to get ahead of the game. So making sure when we do accept something through our front door, we've got capacity and capability we can immediately bring to bear in order then to move forwards and accelerate the discovery phases of the work that we do. And that's really key that we do so. We've got the Chief Technology Officer. So John Owen joined us in April last year, and we've done a lot of investment in the CTO function, and purposely so, because again, that puts the building blocks in place to enable coherent and effective delivery. A significant investment in the reference architecture work that we're doing, and that enables then us to then structure our projects and programs, and indeed organization, with that in mind, to enable obviously that we do things once, and we can share common services, and we can then move forward. The portfolio office, so again, another area of significant investment in our internal delivery engine. So creating up-to-date MI, making sure that we've got coherence of dependency management, risk management, so the fundamentals of program management, really big focus there to enable ourselves to deliver more effectively as well. And then I've talked about biometrics at the end. And then we obviously got the other functions within the senior management team of HR, finance, and commercial, obviously providing the support that we need as well. Right, let's move on if we will. So final slide from me. So we'll expand on more why we're launching this procurement, but over the last 20 months, it's been clear that we've been running lots of tactical, small-scale procurements, that we're almost in a continual procurement cycle, and we're burning through those the values of those procurements in a rapid rate of knots, because the demand is increasing upon us. So actually, for what we initially envisaged those procurements to actually contain versus what they end up being, the growth can be quite significant. So we've got to be careful about that and think differently about how we do this. Otherwise, we're just going to be continually procuring and not achieving really the scale efficiencies, or indeed the cost efficiencies that we would look for as when we move to a more strategic way of working going forwards. So this procurement will not, though, take the place of large-scale program-level procurements. So for the likes of LEDs, for the recent one we've done on Hob for strategic matcher, for the hosting, for NAS and things like that. That's not to say those programs can't utilize this procurement. Far from it, they certainly can. But there will obviously still be a need for program level procurements. But so what we envisage, though, for this, the number of kind of small, medium, and large type of engagements, as you see along the bottom there, all the way from website development to the discovery as a service work that I talked earlier within Alex's team, through resource augmentation within our maps, to the replacement for the Visor capability, and then LEC-P as well. So I talked earlier about our cloud platform, which is a mix of time and materials and outcome based. And that's the key thing here as well. It's not just one single approach that we're aiming for here. It's a mix of fixed price, outcome based, time and materials, resource augmentation. Is the inherent flexibility that we need within this procurement is absolutely key for us. And how we shape that with our strategic partner will be the determinant of success. So really exciting opportunity. Really appreciative that you're here today to listen to us about that, and very much look forward to engaging you on it. So I'll now hand over to Tom.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everyone. Tom Alford from Home Office Commercial. I'll take you through the requirements aspects and the commercial attributes that we're looking for in this particular initiative. Today, supported by Graham Maloney and Paul Corrie. So if there's anything that I miss, either now or during the session, then the guys will contribute to that, either at the end of the sections or as we get to the suitable point for questions at the end. There's a number of key themes that you will have heard from Mike this morning and that will be reiterated through the presentation. So just be aware of those, please. We'll labour those points. Apologies if they do become slightly laboured from a commercial function. That's what you'd probably expect from commercial anyway. We are really keen to get your feedback on the session today, what the opportunity is, the approach that we're taking, and we're happy to be challenged. We're happy to have the approach and the content reinforced. For us, it will be seen as a disappointment if we don't get any questions, any comments in response to today's approach to the market. So that's the kind of introduction. Ellie, can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So we're going to touch on background, intention, and development. So going back to Mike's comments about demanding environments, dynamic workplace, changes in technology and requirements, this spun up a viewpoint in the middle of this year that saw that there was a need for a strategic delivery partner, and we'll come on later to the as-is model and how that works. But again, this will come and talk about coherence in delivery, value for money, etc. And again, just to start to tease out, this is both a resource augmentation, but also an outcome-based activity that we're seeking. The comments earlier, again, about where are we doing, what are those outcomes looking for from a capability and knowledge management perspective within the department. Civil service first as a viewpoint is fundamental to the outcomes that we're looking for as part and parcel of the delivery of this capability and the service that's going to be provided. The development activity, there is still development work to be done. We're going to talk to you today about the route to market, and we'll be keen to hear your feedback on that. One of the bits that Mike touched on before, and we'll come on again, is about the opportunity sizing and understanding what small, medium and large means, both in terms of value, duration and FTE. And the other bit that we're going to talk about is the value chain. And we're going to talk about SMEs, and this is a theme that's going to be throughout the presentation and throughout the engagement from now through till going to market. And we find ourselves with a conundrum, and the conundrum is that we're looking for a single supplier, but we're looking for a single supplier with an extended supply chain and value chain that can bring everything. What we are not particularly looking for is a single supplier that is a one-stop shop, because we found from experience that there is a need to rely on SMEs and the VCSE components within the broader supply chain. So for us, that's going to be a key theme, and we will come on to that, and we will then tell you later on how we're going to deal with that approach to SMEs and how we're going to encourage you with that engagement with SMEs. Ellie, could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So where does the strategic delivery partner fit in the overall delivery process? So I've taken a slide that was far too intelligent for me to understand and dumbed it down. So hopefully we can talk about the kind of a four-stage approach that sees demands on the left-hand side coming through, whether it's from existing customers, operational areas, changes in legislation or threat and requirement, or just other sources. That comes into the front door triage of the consultancy and demand management, and that's where these particular requirements are starting to be shaped, to be scoped, etc. So to Mike's comment, this balances the supply and demand activity of what's coming through the pipeline. Once that's been done, it comes to an organisation, the discovery partner, that undertakes discovery as a service, which is the first of the 4 stages of the Home Office's agile delivery methodology: discovery, alpha, beta, and live. And it's at this particular point where the discovery partner will help shape and do that initial work. At the final stage of it, and I say final, but it's not the final because it is the start of the major activity, is the work that falls to the delivery portfolios, and where we see the strategic delivery partner playing this fundamental role in the delivery of capability within the Home Office. There's just a couple of things that I'd like to pull out at this juncture, and that is all of this is going to be capacity, subject to capacity and the requirements of the environment at the time. And therefore, when we talk about activities, is it going to be bottlenecked as it goes through the various stages? No, it's not. As part of the work that we need to do, the evolution from now to going to market, is the mechanism that sees where capacity is constrained and demand is overriding, that piece where not maybe there's a time where the discovery partner isn't necessarily the route through the process, and actually discovery could be undertaken by the strategic delivery partner. There's also the part that, and this comes back to a theme that we'll talk about when it talks about value for money, understanding where value is lost in the overall process, and that's the handoff between the suppliers. So historically, when there's been multiple suppliers doing multiple elements, there's always that understanding the different handoffs at different stages. So when we talk about the interface between the discovery partner and the delivery partner, there is going to be a relationship and an interaction between the two. And we will see representation from the delivery partner working with the discovery partner, so that there's a warm handover, there's an understanding of what has gone on, there's a common use of language that should see as near as seamless transition from discovery to the alpha phase of delivery. The details for that and how that means to be developed, but the main thing that is keen to be avoided is this: is the work isn't thrown over a wall to be caught by somebody subsequently. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. This slide talks to where we are now with the current delivery model, the challenges we face, and really the focus of what we're looking to achieve. So the current delivery model, as it stands, utilises Home Office staff. It uses interim resource from a number of sources to augment that. We then have third-party resource that may well come from some of the suppliers that are on government frameworks at the moment to help deliver certain elements of capability or certain elements of output-based activity. And then we deal with third-party services. And some of this is going to look similar in the brave new world, but some of it's going to fundamentally change when we look about the existing contracts down there, rather than being embroiled in that continuous procurement loop that Mike spoke about. The use of a single delivery partner is going to get to a point where those agreements, those terms and conditions are already created, and we're then into a much more agile, swifter delivery for those statements of work and the fulfillment of those needs. So this will look fundamentally different when we talk about third-party services at the right-hand side, but it's key to say that this 4-pillar and foundation model does have value going forward in terms of its overall view. The right-hand side, when we look about the challenges of where we are, what we're doing, and what we're trying to achieve, this is where we are particularly keen to get to a more agile way of delivery, looking to leverage a single supplier that is capable, and capable not only in terms of providing outcomes, but also capable in providing standalone individuals and resourcing where needs be to augment those Home Office teams that are part and part of those portfolio delivery aspects. I just want to touch on value for money for a moment and single supplier, because for us, this is going to be a key element. And when we talk about value for money, it's not necessarily beating everybody up for the last pound for that's being contracted for. It's maximising the value that's being delivered. Now, that well may mean that actually the value of something the cost of something has to be greater in order to create the value. There's no point in doing something twice. So we're looking for that coherency, particularly when we see that move through the various phases. The other bit, and we are going to challenge throughout on all of this, but equally we're going to ask for your feedback on it, is when we talk about the extended supply chain and that single supplier, how we address that thorny question of overhead, margin on margin, etc. So it's one of those things that we're keen to explore with yourselves, but just keen to get across the point that this is understanding a partnership activity rather than a beating up the supplier day, if that makes sense. So that's where we are from that, just keen to do that. So ultimately, what is the requirement that we're looking to achieve? And that's to create that value chain that's capable of dealing with the demand management, meeting the capacity, capability and quality that the Home Office is looking for in its delivery portfolios for PPPT. Hopefully that makes sense as a kind of broad brush approach. Next slide, please, Ellie. So what does this mean, and what are we trying to do? It's a slightly busy slide, and I know you won't be able to read that bit in the top left, particularly those on the kind of second half of the room. So I'll talk you through it, but this is to provide you with a narrative afterwards, so you can look back on it and hopefully not be scarred by my delivery, but then see the content that is there. And so what does this drive at? In the top right-hand side, it's looking particularly at two aspects of maturity. And this is not a pejorative phrase. This is an understanding of the dynamic position and environment from a macro and project-specific area that the Home Office operates in. So from a macro perspective, we have, in this particular here a view that says we know what's coming in the pipeline now, and we have a good view for the next 6, 12, 18 months or so. But actually, after that, as new requirements and evolving technology occur and evolve and emerge, then it'll say, well, actually, that portfolio is going to change. And that kind of conversation about changing size, changing demand is going to be a theme that we're going to address through the strategic delivery partner. So hopefully that makes sense from a macro perspective when we look about now 18, 24, 36 months. I'm trying not to steal the thunder of the term, etc., that I'll get to, which I know you all want to hear. And then when we talk about on the right-hand side at the top, this talks about the maturity and development of activities and shaping those projects from discovery, alpha, beta, and live, and showing that maturity and that level of detail and understanding. So hopefully makes sense. Yeah, the bit at the bottom really talks about the key aspects of the delivery being product centric, delivered at pace, focused on the customer. And that's, if we go back to the previous slide and we understand those 4 phases of where the demand emerges from, those particular customers, focusing on outcomes and capability. The intention is that the products will be cloud native, centered in an application basis with appropriate intrinsic security requirements built in. That gets us to the end of the bit about the overall requirement. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm sure there are questions piling on Slido. Paul, Graham, is there anything you'd like to add at this juncture? Okay, thank you both. So that then brings us to the commercial bit. And so I'll step you through this. There's a number of bits that you'd expect to see. There's bits in this that we fundamentally need you to feed back on on certain aspects for us. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the overall approach that we've taken to date is we've worked on what's available through standing government contracts, frameworks, etc., Crown Commercial Services. Just going to talk about why we've alighted on Technology Services 3, Lot 4, projects, major project delivery, and moved away from some of the others. And I think for us, that there's a number of key areas. So rather than talk through the bullet points, we're kind of keen to focus on policy, single supplier, value for money, continuity of delivery, duration of the term, and pre-qualified suppliers that we've got that we know that can deliver those particular activities. So hopefully that makes sense. One of the other activities that we are keen to focus on here, and we'll come on to it later on, is time to delivery and making sure Home Office is furnished with the right capability and the right opportunity to maximise its delivery time. So those elements of policy, single supplier, value for money, duration of the term and capable suppliers are key. It drives us to Technology Services 3. There are over time a number of other frameworks that may come up through government, through Crown Commercial Services, through Cabinet Office that may prove more advantageous or more suitable as we move forward. Obviously, we've got a time frame. We'll step you through that time frame. If those become the route to market more so than Tech Services 3, then clearly we will engage on that. This is an opportunity, and this slide really is a plea for feedback from yourselves about the current selected route to market. It isn't set in stone. So if we find from yourselves or from others that this isn't the most appropriate route through Tech Services 3, then we will absolutely take that on board. And as the business case evolves, that will be played into the updated route to market and the business case development. So on that, again, just a plea to you guys to come back. We are open to challenge. We are open to confirmation. Thank you. Next slide, please, Ellie. So probably the crux of what you're here today, I see pens moving frantically at this point to get down to the term that we're looking for. So it's initially a 3-year term that could be extended to 5. That's the thought process at the moment. The view is not to make it longer than 5 due to changes in technology, changes in delivery, changes in government, but also have that ability to meet and extend from 3 years to 5 in order to meet those portfolio delivery requirements that we're looking for. We're looking at the price at the initial value, and that's annually. If you thought it was just 20 million, full stop, it is annually. And of course, part of the activity that we're doing to evolve the requirement is to make sure that in that T-shirt sizing activity that we do for small, medium and large, that actually we get the size of the contract value correct. Because what we don't want to do is to get to a position similar to Mike articulated earlier, where we've created this, we've burnt through to the maximum level, and we've got nowhere to go but to start again. So, and equally, what we don't want to do is to get to a point where we've made it far greater than the opportunity delivers. So the challenge for commercial guys working with the portfolio delivery is to get to a point that correctly sizes the gross opportunity. Again, I will just kind of go back and say that's the intention from that point of view. How that looks in terms of small, medium and large in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will be an evolving picture. But the indicative viewpoint is that the spend on a per annum basis will continue to be moderately flat within that amount that we've indicated, or we will indicate by the time we get to market. There will be some flexibility, but it's just important to get to, that's our starting position, but we do want to have that dialogue internally to make sure that that's right. I've touched on Technology Services 3. I've also touched on SMEs. VCSEs, voluntary community and social enterprise, and we'll touch on some of the government policy round about VCSEs and SMEs. And some of the questions might be, well, is that relevant to this particular activity? And I would strongly advise that it does have significant potential, particularly around about some of the use cases and technology requirements that can be massively informed by the expertise and knowledge that VCSEs have. So we will be kind of encouraging that, and particularly SMEs, in that broader picture. We've got some elements here, and one of them probably stands out as an emotive issue, and we'll certainly take feedback on this as we evolve through the process, and that is rate card. We will touch on that, and we will equally work through that subject of supply chain, rate card, margin, etc. So we are alive to that, and as part of the feedback that we're going to ask for, we would like your views on those particular aspects. The major question that we're going to ask here is how to ensure that credible supply chain is built cognizant of the cost and value for money aspects within the overall agreement. And again, we look for your support in that shaping activity, but also in the engagement that we're going to ask for with the SMEs. Can we have the next slide, please, Ellie? Thank you. So it's never a proper presentation without commercial talking about commercial methodology. So we're not showing the crown jewels when we talk about critical success factors, and we're not showing you what the evaluation criteria are going to be. We are showing you here what the thinking is at the moment about what successful attributes will be brought together for the strategic delivery partner. So we've spoken before about flexibility. We've talked about an effective supply chain. We've spoken about value for money and the fact that it is value creation that we're looking for, not necessarily a race to the bottom. Look at some of the activities around about avoidance of risk, making sure that we do the right thing in public procurement. We're making sure that we get that almost that unicorn activity of fantastic suppliers who can deliver on an outcome basis, but can also provide that resource basis and work across that fixed cost, time and materials perspective, BIR 35 compliant from a overall employment perspective, and clearly to protect the Home Office from that. We've spoken before at the beginning, and probably hasn't been reinforced enough, is this is all about capability creation and capability creation internally and how we upskill the Home Office civil servant community. And one of the key attributes for all of this is effective delivery timing. So that probably leads to, just before we get on to timings for next activities, I'd just like to touch briefly on SME and social value. Next slide, please, Ellie. Thank you. So this is still a work in progress from some of you who will have competed more recently under government contracts will be aware of the requirement to address SME and social value. There are some of these that are absolutely fundamental to how the successful outcome will look for suppliers. And particularly when we talk about levelling up equal opportunities, those attributes are going to be developed over time to start shaping that procurement activity. We look on the right-hand side again about SMEs on that. That was all I really wanted to talk about, social value and SMEs. Could I have the next slide, please, Ellie? Thank you. So next steps, and that brings us to really talking through what we've done today, but equally what comes next from this. So I've badgered you persistently throughout this to ask for feedback. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that feedback and we're going to review it. It's going to help shape the approach coming forward. We're also going to issue a request for information, an RFI, that again is seeking feedback against some very specific questions. And what that is going to do, and just to be really open, that is not evaluated. That's us asking you information to help shape our requirement and go back to market. So that's going to come out, and that will come out in the coming days. And what we're going to do is we're holding a SME event similar to today towards the end of this month, We've got an indicative date, and we just need to work through some of the timings and logistics of what that looks like. And we will not just hold that for SMEs, but that will be an event where yourselves can come, meet those SMEs, understand that broader capability and help create your thought process, your responses potentially round about the value chain. And hopefully, furnished with the RFI and the detail that's contained in there, the basis of today and that session with the SMEs, that should get us to a position where actually when we come to ask for a competition, we'll at the end of the calendar year, everyone should be au fait with what we're looking to contract for. And then so there we see delivery or competition December. Don't worry, there's not going to be a RFP deadline of the 24th of December. I know that's a kind of common practice in that particular bit. No, this isn't for December, this is for Easter. No, sorry. So the end of March in that particular activity, and then the wrapping up bit of all of the due diligence, contracts, etc., standstill in April. So I know that's been a whistle-stop tour. It's probably been too noisy, too loud, too quick, and not giving you the opportunity for it to land and embed. Now's an opportunity. I think that's our last slide before we move to questions. So if you could just give us a couple of moments just to reorganise ourselves, and the presentation team and the broader team will be open to questions.
Wonderful. Yes, if the Al would mind just gathering on the table so the microphones can pick you up for the.
Does that need to go off?
No, I'll
Okay.
I'll be here. I think we'll try. And just a reminder to those both here in the room and attending virtually, please.
Oh, sorry.
Please do remember we're not taking questions here physically. Questions must be submitted via Slido code 692797. That's 692797. Do jump to Slido now if you haven't already. Log in. And we've got plenty coming in already, so I'll work down in order of votes if the panel are comfortable with that. So, question, thank you, from Denise. Great example of how to ask a question in the room via Slido. So, Tom, addressed to you, but I'm sure others can chip in. Can you talk a bit about how the portfolios, the individual portfolios, will be encouraged and incentivized to utilise the strategic delivery partner service once it's procured?
I'd love to, but I think it's probably one for Mike or Alex, because yes, we'll set it up, but how it's then enacted and mandated, encouraged, etc., is very much for Mike and Alex. So I'm going to shirk that one and direct it to.
I'll take it and jump in as well.
Yep.
So there's broad support. In fact, there's unanimous support across the senior management team within PPPT that this is the right thing to be doing and the way that we'll do this going forwards. And then as we start enacting the procurements through the new partnership, we're making sure that we're not kicking off any DOS agreements unless absolutely necessary and for specific. So those will be governed as part of the normal day-to-day business within the organisation. It's a very clear direction that this strategic partnership is the vehicle of choice for the work that we need to be doing with partners.
Yeah, I would just reiterate that. There is no great desire from a delivery point of view to use lots of kind of smaller, disparate contracts. I think there will be, I know there will be a real sense of relief in having a major contract to draw upon, because we also, in addition to it reducing our own individual workloads and making life easier, we also know it will really help with join up across PPPT as well. It will help us in joining up and working whilst having separate portfolios, delivering in a consistent and coherent way.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Mike. Next question is sort of, I'm going to merge a couple here, but both on sort of rates and rate cards. So the first question is, will you be expecting rates in line with the Optimus rate card? I think you had a bit that on slide 22, which I think sort of covered that to an extent. And then the second one on rates, will you expect a trade-off between the rate card and the location of staff? What security constraints apply? And will offshore staff be allowed?
Okay, I can take the Optimus element, security constraints. I think that's something that I'll ask Mike if you can take. But Optimus rate card and the rates that we're talking about, there is something that we have been discussing as a Home Office commercial team and others. Now that clearly is a standard, but we need to make sure as we go through this market engagement is have some open dialogue about some of the whether there are challenges around that. We've been doing some market analysis and of course with IR35, COVID and EU exit, there have been some that they impact those rates. Clearly location does as well. So we want to make sure that there is a that we get the right outcome at the moment on that. But so I would say yes, that is our benchmark, but we are open as part of the procurement to make sure that we get the right outcome for this. So it's not necessarily a constraint, but it's something that we are reviewing.
Thanks so much.
With regard to location, obviously places to growth is a key tenet of the government strategy, and this will be a part of that as well. So certainly looking at location, so we won't be paying the kind of Croydon tax. We're sending kind of hundreds of people down to Bernard Weatherall or other buildings within DDaT that we've got down there. So we've clearly shown over the last 20 months that we can operate very effectively in a much more kind of remote way, rather than actually having armies of people in our desks and in our offices and what have you. So I think that's key. With regards to nearshore or offshore, obviously we deal with sensitive data and sensitive arenas within law enforcement and homeland security. So that isn't currently on the agenda. However, we're constantly having those conversations internally about, is there a way that we can actually do this going forward? So currently no, but certainly continuing to evolve those conversations, certainly. With regard to security clearance, again, obviously relatively sensitive areas that we work within, so SC. Not sure if everyone will need PPPT as well.
Not everybody, but a significant proportion.
Yeah. So again, police vetting and obviously Home Office SC as well. And obviously a key part of this is actually how can we help you get ahead of the game with regards to SC clearances and what have you. So that kind of a bit more innovatively about how we can build a wider portfolio of SC cleared people. So I know that's a common refrain from the existing partner base of actually how can we get people cleared and how do we enable that kind of the ramp up of new pieces of work to be minimized as much as possible, and clearances it's an area of that set.
And Alex reminded me to just to add and build on the rates around outcome based. So obviously we understand that there are different dimensions, of course. So the dimensions around sizing of a team, the scope, how long it would take. Of course, those things would form part of the value for money assessment on these things too. So yeah, rates clearly is key to that, but there are other dimensions to it as well for an outcome based delivery.
Thanks very much, Paul and Mike. Another question again from Denise. What will good look like for PPPT at that first breakpoint in the new contract?
I think it'd be measured in a number of ways, obviously, both soft and hard measures. I think the strength of the relationship is absolutely key. The ability to deliver and the quality of the delivery is certainly there as well. And actually how we're evolving jointly as a strategic partnership. So we talked earlier about how do we going to develop our civil service colleagues within that. So again, the key part of that, we're continually to recruit key roles within the Home Office and actually developing those colleagues accordingly as part of this as well. So I think delivery is paramount, obviously. We're here to deliver against our commitments that we make to our customers to enable the operational impact that they need to realise. that's first and foremost in our minds, obviously, but it's the way we deliver, how we empower teams, how we empower individuals, how we engage strategically, how do we move forward to the strength of the relationship. But
Yeah.
Alex, anything further?
No, I would repeat all of that, but you know, I think we've been quite open that we are an organisation that is maturing. I think, Mike, you spoke last week about the fact that we're moving to be a product centric organisation, and that's a really big journey for us, and it's a really, really big journey for our stakeholders, for our customers, our users. And so helping us get that right and getting to a point where there isn't any kind of protectionism, that actually we are just delivering as a single unit, delivering well and maturing, I think is absolutely key within this. You know, you're never going to get away from the fact that we need to deliver, but doing that in a way that makes us kind of collectively stronger, more coherent, a more mature organisation is absolutely an imperative, I think.
Thank you, Alex, and great question. Denise, question now from Joe at NCC, and Joe, congratulations for the most popular question so far. Who determines the SME subcontractor mix, the prime or the home office?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've as Tom mentioned, the process we're going through is looking to try and understand what your thoughts and views are on that. So we want to engage with that. I know that there are some organisations that may need to change their approach to how they engage with SMEs. You know, there are some organisations that they've got a supply chain that exists today, working with their commercial team, that's structured, and that's difficult to change. And maybe, you know, it's a challenge for yourselves working with your procurement commercial teams to try and adjust that. Then there's clearly a finance part to this where you've probably got a floor around what the margin is for working with a variety of professional services organisations, right? So we get and understand there are some challenges there. So the mix and the type, there's different skills, capabilities that we need to think about. So who would do? So the answer around who would determine, we're still looking to determine that, but we need you to evidence some of the things we're discussing. Is we'll need as part of the process to evidence that you do have a broad value chain. What that looks like, we're still looking to develop.
Yeah, I'd say the requirements probably drive that rather than us driving a view on particular SMEs. It's more the particular niche skills that we've got. And data science might be an example, or AI or something like that might be around the requirement that then says, okay, you tap into that broader supply chain. You think, okay, who could you bring to the party to bring them skills and terms?
I was going to say exactly that. I don't think we want a scenario, and this is us kind of starting as we mean to go on. I don't think we want a scenario where we are giving you a kind of tick list so that we get lots of very similar propositions. They may end up being similar, but I think what we hope to convey through the process is to help you develop an understanding of our needs. And I think by doing that, our hope is that you will come up with proposals that may be different to what we're thinking about at the moment, but that's not a bad thing. It's actually, again, helping us to think about how we can approach some of the challenges that we have within that. So I think absolutely we need to make sure that we articulate what our challenges, what our needs are, and particularly where they may relate to SME specialist organisations. And then beyond that, we're really open to what that might look like.
Indeed, and just I think to expand on the diversity as well angle, obviously engaging the SME, actually bring a lot of diversity to the value chain, and also enable a quicker response, because no organisation and single organisation is going to be able to respond quickly to every single demand that comes through. Having that value chain underneath the organisation and the partner can really drive the whole performance of the contract and the ability to respond effectively. Some organisations such as the MOD, they exist on a kind of a level of revenue that will go through to the SME community. Again, we're not stipulating that at this point, but it's something that obviously we're considering as part of all of this to say, how do we engage and how do we incentivise the engagement and the diversity within the value chain?
Thank you very much all, and great question, Joe. Thanks very much. Popular question from Mick at Capgemini. Can you please clarify clarify how this procurement will relate and or interact with other DDaT-wide strategic partner procurements? I don't know if that's something you can
I can start that, and then other colleagues can jump in as well. This is not going to replace them, obviously, and as Triple PT, we do tap into those other procurements as well. So, but this is about making sure that we've got a partner in place that will go on the journey with us on the way that we're looking at product centricity, the way that we're going to develop and evolve as an organisation, and to help us fulfil our demand as well. Because some of those obviously DDaT level procurements, obviously everyone's tapping into them. So again, quickly becomes a point of constraint rather than a point of creation, value creation. So you've got to be careful about that as well. So it's won't replace, it's in addition to.
And I think just to add to that, you know, as Mike said, we absolutely do use some of those DDaT central contracts, and I wouldn't see that kind of completely ending. There will be times when those are the most appropriate ones to utilise, to leverage. But I think it's recognising that actually the majority of our supplier spend is done through local contracts at the moment. And so it's recognising that we can do that in a more efficient and effective way. And I think on top of that, I would say we work within a particular environment, within a particular context of law enforcement and national security. And that has quite a different set of characteristics to that the kind of overarching DDaT ones cover. And there is benefit in building a relationship with a partner, a delivery partner who can get to understand that, become familiar with it, and therefore operate as effectively as possible within that context. So I don't think we're at a point where we would ever say we're not going to use them, but they aren't really our default now. We do sometimes use them, but not always. And I think it's making sure that when we look at local commercial arrangements, they are as consistent and as effective as possible.
Yeah, no one can answer that.
Thanks so much. Alex, thanks. Mike, interesting question from Maggie here, going back to that sort of SME supply chain issue. Are you seeking a clearly defined exclusive supply chain or a more dynamic marketplace where the strategic delivery partner manages ongoing competition on your behalf?
I hadn't envisaged more the latter, probably more the former. This isn't really a SIAM model where we're looking at asking our partner to then kind of run procurements on our behalf. This is about going to our partner, working hand in glove with our partner to assess the demand, assess the need, assess the evolving skills mix that we're going to need going forwards, and how do we deliver more effectively. So, and then for the partner then to develop their value chain in order to actually fulfill that demand. So no, I don't see that as being a pass-through kind of procurement vehicle for us, rather than a value chain led and owned by the partner.
This requirements are going to change over time anyway, and it's not about the procurement and going through as much of that procurement side, but it's chain current and the dynamism and whatever that we're looking for as part of that. So an ongoing activity as things change.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for the question, Maggie. Another popular question here from Brendan. Thanks for the question. Does the £20 million per annum sizing of the strategic delivery partner opportunity reflect the expected growth in the in-house civil service capability in PPPT?
So I think it would be fair to say I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say the 20 million is an approximation. Is that, you know, that's looking at what we've spent in over the past few years, and what of that we would anticipate going through this route. We do have plans to grow the civil service contingent. That is a really clear commitment. We never do that as quickly as we want to. It's a very, as I'm sure you're all aware, it's a very competitive market, and so that is hard, but that is a clear and stated intent. But I think the other thing is we see a continuing growth in demand. We don't see our demand pipeline getting any quieter, and so what we effectively have is demand coming in at a faster rate then we're finishing off and closing down projects and programs. So there is obviously a risk within that we have a constantly growing portfolio of delivery. That's something that we need to address. We need to get better at delivering and kind of wrapping up and passing on. But I think within that, even if we were to significantly grow our civil service contingent, I think it's our shared expectation that that spend is going to be about right, simply because demand is continuing to increase. There is an element of uncertainty in there. Our demand management pipeline is not mature enough that we can look ahead 3 years with a high level of confidence. But I think it's something that we've looked at, kind of kicked around a bit and said, yes, we think that's about right.
And as an organisation, we obviously spend significantly north of that across the year through different funding mechanisms that we are provided with. So it's an approximation, but I think it's a relatively accurate approximation for the next 5 years.
Thank you very much, Alex and Mike. A question from Ty. This is a SIAM model, so how do you propose to manage margin on margin, making costs higher?
Sure, it's a SIAM.
Not a SIAM model.
It's not about multiple suppliers. As Tom outlined, because it's that prime supplier then with the value chain that sits as
yeah. So yeah, I think we would all push back and say we don't see this as a SIAM model, but yes, there is still a value chain. So there are, the point around margin on margin may still be a valid one. I guess that's something I would put back to the room. How would you propose that is most effectively managed? Help us get this right in a way that works not just for us as the Home Office and not just for the key supplier, but for their value chain as well. We know that this is hard. We know that this is complex, and it's something that we want to get right. And I think that's one of the reasons that we have the follow-up SME engagement day in the next few weeks, isn't it?
27th, I think we've tentatively.
Some of the value from the SME market is more around, it might be, I don't know, knowledge transfer days or best practice days or something that you wouldn't necessarily get in private. This is trying to tap into that relationship somehow. Again, it's evolving thinking of how we're trying to make that work. So not individual relationships we need to manage, but ones that we want to tap into to sort of extract and maximise the value. So again, that's sort of thought process at the moment.
And just to add to that as well, I've run large accounts out in industry as well, and obviously it can be margin diluting. If you use your own internal resources, obviously the margins are higher, sometimes significantly so. But we need to take a blended view. It's a long-term relationship. It's a significant size relationship over the next 5 years that we're looking to establish. What we're keen to ensure is that we don't have to have a paper-based relationships when nothing really flows down to the SME community, and we don't get the capacity and capability uplifts that we need urgently in order to deliver what we need to do as well. But it is a balance, and we were open for conversations around that as we shape the procurement going forwards. But keen for it to be actually a real opportunity for SMEs to engage, not just a paper-based exercise.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Can I just add? Sorry.
Oh.
It's important. The SME element to this is important, but it's not the only element as well. So we don't forget that too. That it may be, as Mike mentioned, it's a overall team. You may have some specialists within there, and so this is where, as I mentioned earlier, there are some things that maybe a lot of organisations may need to do differently to try and manage that. To Alex's point, what would you do to try and manage this?
Thank you. And yeah, I think good question, but so not quite a SIAM, and also I think a great challenge there from Alex to the industry. How do you guys, how does the supplier base intend to manage that? So please make sure you're considering that when you respond to the RFI. Popular question from Richard. Thanks very much. Lots of helpful detail on the scope and process. Can you perhaps share a bit more on skills and capability gaps and operational examples of the challenges you would expect the partner to help with?
I'll start, and then Alex, you jump in as well. So it's not just about skills and capability gaps. Obviously, as part of this as well, it's going to be with our strategic partner, we would like you to deliver products or deliver an end-to-end project on our behalf. So there will be resource augmentation elements to it as well. And it will come as no surprise that the kind of skills gaps that we're struggling to fill are at the kind of the architect level. Trying to obviously pay civil service rates for senior architects that we need to deliver the stuff that we need is obviously challenging, and others within the different skills as well across the thing. So the skills that we need and the capabilities we need to bring to bear are all the ones in this room that you all have as well. So we're all in the kind of the business of delivering product and capability to our customers, whatever guise they may well be. So it will be tapping into that to enable us then to provide more capability to us in order to deliver as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. So I think again, it's something that may change over time. So it might be initially there is a focus on resource augmentation, moving to over time as we mature and as the relationship matures, more of an outcome-based relationship. That's not something that we've defined, but it would be a reasonable thing to assume. I think, as Mike says, within that context, there is a reasonable anticipation of teams of people, not just individuals. And I think coming back to the point, architecture and those, quite technical skills are something that I think we all experience challenges in getting hold of. But also within that, in the move to a product-centric organisation, those product team skills. So we do want to, wherever possible, make sure that we keep product management roles in particular as civil servant roles to give that longevity and that continuity. But within that, you have all the user-based, user research-based roles, delivery leads, and so forth. That kind of whole team concept is a really important one, where I think we could anticipate very quickly drawing off against any contract to bring in a team or teams to deliver entire projects, perhaps with a civil service mix within that. So a blended team approach. But I think it's going to be particularly around those two areas. I think within the SME space, you start to look perhaps more at the kind of the specialist skills, perhaps kind of data science, AI. There is a huge desire as we deliver some of these programs that are making data more available to say, okay, we've made the data more available. What are we going to do with it? And to a large extent, that is for our stakeholders, for our customers, our users to drive. But it's something where we are often there working hand in hand and helping them do that, as much as anything to inform future product roadmaps, to explore what the art of the possible is, in order to then inform how future products should develop and evolve.
Thank you very much, Alex. Question from Rahul, which I think I might be able to answer, but Paul and Graham do come in as well. Is the Home Office open to sharing details of interested suppliers and thereby facilitating potential collaborations with SMEs? I know other of your colleagues in sort of Home Office DDaT commercial side have had a bit of traction with their supplier Tinder, as they call it. We've discussed having the event here on the 27th. So I mean, that is something you're relatively keen to encourage and promote.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's the purpose of the follow-up event, is to try and create that environment where the details can be shared and there's some engagement there. So yeah, that'll be a broader event.
Absolutely, I strongly encourage everyone here today, dialing in or here physically, to consider opting into that mechanism and taking part in that second event if you can. It should be a good one. Thanks, Rahul. Next question. Just give me a moment. Interesting one from Dylan. Thanks, Dylan. Will there be options to vary the TS3 terms for SMEs to allow a broader range of SMEs to be part of an ecosystem?
I think I'll take that, guys, if that's all right. I think thank you for the question, particularly around about Crown Commercial Services frameworks. I think the answer to that is we're in discussion with Crown Commercial Services to talk about specific elements of this, particularly the nuance around about SME inclusion and how that plays through with the overall competition. So my kind of rather unhelpful answer is it is top of our agenda, and we will be in a position to enlighten you further once we've had those discussions. It will either come out at round about the time of the RFI, but at the very latest, it will be when we have the SME day.
Thank you. Great question. Thanks.
I think it's a similar question from Richard, isn't it? So I think
Yes, I was just going to take that one.
Thing, isn't it?
Okay. I don't think we are lotting.
No, it's suggesting.
So the question, sorry. Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry. The question's just around, have you considered using lot 3 or one of the sublots under lot 3 rather than lot 4 for tech services 3?
The current viewpoint is no, but as per kind of earlier on, we're open to challenge on it, and we'd kind of welcome that conversation, particularly around about where you see the benefits of lot 3 outweighing the benefits of lot 4. So more than happy to have that conversation, but our view is that at the moment, lot 4 provides that opportunity that gives us that single supplier. It gives us that benefit, subject to those kind of fine-tuned conversations with CCS, but more than happy to pick up on that lot 3 basis. And Henry, what we'll do is we'll give you an answer to that for the kind of broader distribution pack.
Thank you very much.
Just to build on that, lot 4 in tech services 3, and I'm sure you know, lot 4 covers everything, right? So it covers lot 3 as well. So it depends on whether a supplier is in that lot 4 and you're in lot 3 but not on lot 4. That may be the reason for the question, but just so you understand, the scope of lot 4 is the lot. Yeah, so it's not restricted. So that's one of the reasons.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Tom. Another question from Brendan. Have you considered approaches already adopted by other organisations or elsewhere in the Home Office, such as AC, Accelerated Capability Environment, that have attempted to open up the supplier chain and access to SMEs? Have you sort of considered, or really rather just a comment, something you might consider, and perhaps people in their RFIs could?
Yeah. So we do some work with ACE already. And we've got real value out of doing that, using them as the specific example. But of course, ACE isn't for delivering to the point of go live and sustainment beyond that point. Mechanisms like ACE are really fantastic for exploring, as I said before, the art of the possible. But one has to be very careful to respect the boundaries, because otherwise you can risk ending up with kind of a bit of a shadow IT estate, and we really don't want to go there. So I would anticipate, and again, this is an emerging picture, that those options are still available to us. I don't think I don't think any of us want to suggest that this delivery partner contract is instead of those things, but it's making sure that where we are doing delivery, and particularly that delivery that takes us through to live and beyond, that we have a really good, strong strategic relationship with a delivery partner who can enable us to do that.
Thanks very much, Alex. There are a couple of other questions around frameworks that essentially, are you wedded to TS3, or would you consider other routes to market beyond?
We're not wedded to it, and we are at the early stages of the project. I think the viewpoint would be is as we evolve and go forward, taking the feedback and as the maturity develops, particularly round about the sizing of those call-offs, that will impact our thinking as the correct or the most appropriate commercial vehicle. So if it fundamentally changes, or if CCS issue a new framework that it is more appropriate, then we will certainly revisit that. So coming back to kind of the earlier statement, no, we're absolutely not wedded to it. It's not set in stone, and the thinking will evolve over time.
Fantastic. Nice, clear answer. Thank you very much, Tom. Question, I think you've already covered this, but it's just come in as quite popular, so it might be worth re-emphasising it. Will you be looking to ensure that the government spending targets for SMEs are met within this contract? So I think you've already sort of hinted that you're not going to have sort of specific spend.
Well, again, we'll address that through over the next coming months, really, as when we get the RFI responses back, and as our thinking evolves in readiness for the ITT, whether we stipulate a defined amount of revenue through to the SME community or not. So we're open at this moment in time.
I think one thing I'd add with that is it's quite difficult from a commercial element to nail it down and then live with it, particularly bearing in mind the evolving nature of the technology requirement over time, and it may not be appropriate, or even those SMEs might not have those requirements that the major vendors have that the Home Office are looking for, and we would then be almost hoisted by our own petard for having set out a volume for SMEs when actually the most effective delivery is not through the SME market, but is driven by that demand or changing demand.
Thank you very much. And I think that's all the questions we've had in. So we have just about managed to stick to time. Ellie, would you mind just going back a slide? I think it might be worth just reiterating, just as we close, the next steps and the timeline. So as you can see there, be an RFI following this. There's a follow-up event to foster that collaborative ecosystem approach between sort of primes and SMEs that we're hoping to host towards the end of this month. And then you can see there the indicative timeline over the course of the coming months. One last question submitted just at the end. When will there be an opportunity to view the delivery roadmap? For example, is identity verification, authentication a consideration for PPPT or its end customers? So sort of identity verification.
I think as we evolve the scope and the documentation, when we move to those further competition documents, there will be an element of sharing with the supplier base, obviously driven by security constraints, but also by the level of maturity at that particular moment in time for that kind of window of proximity, if that helps.
Fantastic. Thank you all very much indeed. We'll draw it to a close there. Just to reiterate, we'll be sharing the slides, the recording, all the follow-up materials over the course of this afternoon and the coming days. Just left to me to thank you all very much for coming. Thanks for those of you who joined remotely. And of course, thank you so much, Alex, Paul, Tom, Mike, and Graham for coming along and joining us this morning. Thank you all. And please do, if you're here, stay around for a chat, a coffee.
And thank you for hosting us.
Well, no,
Yes,
thank you.